Sheer driving pleasure, a phrase that makes you think of one thing and one thing only: BMW. They've been making cars, motorcycles, and even planes for more than a century. And today, we will be diving deep into the long and eventful history of BMW and how it changed the world. So join me as we go into BMW, the sheer drive to success. It's the beginning of the First World War, and there is one thing that has changed combat forever: planes. Planes at first weren't used how you may think. They're only used to spy on the enemy and see what they were doing and then relay that info to the team on the ground. The pilots had weapons like handguns and bombs, nothing major. But there was soon a breakthrough, introducing an interrupter mechanism allowing the machine gun to fire through the propeller blades without hitting them. This unlocked air-to-ground and air-to-air combat. Now there is a competition between companies and countries. Who can make the better plane? Enter 30-year-old Franz Joseph Popp, a member of the Austro-Hungarian Imperial and Royal Aviation Troops, where he was going to serve his 1-year volunteer military service as a marine engineer. But he was ordered back to Austria after only 3 weeks as an overseer of aircraft production at the Austro-Daimler Works. He tries to gain a license to manufacture engines that are already in production, but he doesn't succeed. So he returns to Austro-Daimler to work on his own 12-cylinder aircraft engine. But when it's complete, he needs a partner to help him manufacture the engine, since Austro-Daimler has already been encountering a bit of difficulty. He remembers a company he encountered while being a marine engineer: Rapp Engine Works, founded and run by Karl Rapp. Franz found the partner he needed. So let's go into what this all has to do with BMW. Franz Joseph Popp was one of the 4 men who founded BMW, along with Karl Rapp. Let's talk about our third founder now, Camillo Castiglione, an Italian, Austrian, Jewish financier and banker. Damn, that's a lot to take in. But back to the point. His father was the chief rabbi and runs a rubber manufacturing business. Camillo goes to law school, but he gets his first job at a car tire company, which makes him very good at financing. He also has a passion for flying. One of his first companies is a ballooning company. He had a balloon driver license, and he also owns an aircraft company. He buys Kaiser Karl's private parlor car and has shares in Austro-Daimler, which is why he is part of founding BMW. Camillo is happy with Franz's decision of letting Rapp Engine Works manufacture the Daimler engines. So now, Rapp has the license granted, but Franz does not like some of the manufacturing decisions that Franz Engine Works is taking. He believes that the company won't reach the manufacturing goals, so he takes the factory manager position to ensure that they meet orders on time. He also knows there is a need of talent in the company, since these engines are very difficult to manufacture and produce. Meet Max Friz, one of the most talented engineers of his generation. In 1913, he designed the first practical German plane engine at Daimler Motors. He also made the car engine that won the French Grand Prix in 1914. While Max was at Daimler Motors, he comes across Karl Rapp, who at the time was a technical designer. But it's 1917 and Max is not happy with Daimler Works because Paul Daimler refuses to accept his idea on engine development. Max wants a big, high compression engine, but Paul wants to use supercharged engines. So Max applies at Rapp Engine Works. Karl was going to ignore it at first, but Franz knew the company needed talent, so he orders Karl to hire Max. Max now has people to work with who won't turn down his designs. And before anyone knew, there are shiny new designs to play with. Max really had talent, and now the company was going to soar. The first few engines, the BMW 3 and the BMW 4, are pretty effective, and the company is now slowly growing with the releases of these new engines. So now, they're reorganizing the company. Karl has his contract terminated and leaves the company he began. Franz is now managing director, and the company is now named BMW-motorrad.lv, GmbH, or Bavarian Motor Works Company in English. BMW is formed. Bayrich is for Bavaria, a state in the southeast of Germany, and Motorrad is Motor Works. So now that the company is officially the company we all know and love, let's continue. BMW has a brand new shiny engine, and it's called the BMW 3A, a high altitude engine. And it's got a fancy carburetor that adjusts fuel richness at different altitudes. It is so high altitude, in fact, that another Franz Diemer, flies it so high he breaks the world record at 32,000 feet. He said, quote, "I could have gone much higher, but I didn't have enough oxygen. It was a great engine, but squadron leader Ernest Date said, quote, the only bad thing is, it came too late. For the Germans, that is, of course. But a few months later, the war ends, and Germany is defeated. That means all air forces have to shut down for 6 months. BMW is grounded, and they're pretty screwed. So while we wait for the 6 months to pass, let's talk about the fourth and final person known for BMW. Let's go back a few years. Enter Gustav Otto, the son of Nicholas Otto. Gustav never worked at BMW, so you're probably asking, then why is he important? Let me get to that. His father, Nicholas, is an engineer. More specifically, the engineer who invented the 4-stroke internal combustion engine. Yep, the legendary suck, squeeze, bang, blow. And that love for engines has been passed down to his son, Gustav. Gustav is a race car driver and motorcycle racer. Oh, and not to mention, he built his own damn plane. Yes, he built his own plane. Has that sunk in yet? Okay, let's move on. It's 1915 and Gustav is under pressure. Why? Because the German aircraft engines are having quality and production issues. Sounds like a skill issue. Gustav's company is in financial despair and he is under so much pressure that he becomes depressed. The anxiety of war is also way too great, so great in fact that he is admitted into a mental hospital. He sells his company to Bayerische Flugzeugwerke, Bavarian Aircraft Works, or BFW, and they're also having skill issues with the motors. So BFW makes some changes, and with Gustav's engine designs, they become very successful. Let's go back to 1920. During the 6 months, BFW is working on making motorcycles by the names of Flink and Helios. Meanwhile, Max is making the BMW M2B15 with a 492cc longitudinal flat twin engine. It is also used in the Helios BFW engines. Also, fun fact, BMW is also making brakes for trains and industrial machines, and they will relocate the company to Munich. And this makes the BMW name practically disappear for some time. So in 1921, BMW is practically gone. BFW is also gone, described by Franz as a dead company in a town. Camilo later buys the BMW name and logo, and the company Knorr-Bremse, which owns BFW. He transfers everything into BFW and changes the name from Bayerische Flugzeugwerke to Bayerische Motorradwerke. BMW is finally back. The company decides that the smartest thing to do with the Helios motorcycles is to dump them. And so, they make the new motorcycle introducing the BMW R32. No, not that R32. This R32. And BMW is now looking at an astronomical level of success, becoming one of Germany's biggest industrial companies. And 6 years afterwards, the BMW company buys automotive factories to start manufacturing their cars. BMW manufactures the already existing Dixie, but BMW wants to make a full-fledged BMW. So they introduced the BMW 3/20 PS, followed by the 303. It's also the first car to have the BMW split grille. It was underpowered, going only 56 miles an hour, but it was inexpensive. But what about the twin grille? BMW without a twin grille would be like a Rubik's Cube without colors. Divided grilles were not uncommon in those days, but Frizz Fielder wants to improve the aerodynamics, and so he takes the grille, splits it in two, and angles them outwards. He also rounds it at the top and bottom for the logo. It's an elegant design for BMW. Later, the grilles became smaller because the grille isn't the only thing the engine is dependent on to cool down. And a few years afterwards, the grille is turned horizontal, which is more elegant. But it seems BMW today has overdone it. Some models having absolutely immense grilles that just look ridiculous. But enough talk about grilles. Camilo is having a bit of financial issues and sells BMW to some banks. And in World War II, he moves to Italy disguised as a monk. And France has an agreement with Pratt Whitney, allowing them to manufacture a couple of air-cooled radial aircraft engines. And later, BMW leaves the contract and is able to make their own air-cooled engines. This makes BMW go back to making aircraft engines for the Germans. But Franz is a bit off, since he does not feel good about manufacturing aircraft engines for the German Air Force again. Money-wise, it is very good for the company, but he will not be able to run the company at his own will under the National Socialist regime. And the government is producing BMW plants known as shadow plants with forced labor. The government is now trying to remove Franz from the regime because his family was being treated by a Jewish doctor. So Fran once again complies, and in 1940, there are setbacks in manufacturing with shortages of labor and materials. So now, Franz is in more trouble, being accused of alleged not completing his duties to the government and even sabotage. Finally, the war ends, and Franz is arrested by the Allies by having the title Military Economic Leader. Max and Franz can no longer work at BMW, and companies are now banned from making vehicles over 100 cc's. But BMW stays alive, making pots and pans from leftover engine metals. It is now 1948, and the ban is a bit more flexible, with the limit now being 250 cc's. So BMW is back to making motorcycles with the release of the R24. It is really inexpensive and complies with the government's annoying power regulations. And finally, after that, BMW resumes its car manufacturing journey in its only surviving factory in Munich with the BMW 501, a luxurious BMW salon with a spacious and comfortable interior. And it meets safety standards that are literally ahead of its time. It's an awesome car, but almost ends BMW itself, because BMW can't get enough produced in time, and it was too expensive for your average German at the time. So BMW is skating on the edge of bankruptcy. So this is where BMW licenses the little Isetta and puts a BMW one-cylinder in it. The car, or I don't know if you can even call it one, is extremely successful because it is so unique and cute. Afterwards, BMW releases the BMW 700, a cute and compact roadster which succeeds in the market. But BMW is not saved just yet. It's December 9th, 1959, and it's the annual meeting of BMW. A takeover bid from Daimler is on the table and things aren't looking good. They are close to bankruptcy and saying that the workers have been valued way too low. The meeting ends without a resolution and nothing comes of it. One of BMW's biggest investors, Herbert Quant, decides to invest much more in the company to help it and its workers. This ends up saving BMW, and now BMW is back on track, and in 1961, they release a new line of sedans, the 1500. It's a great car, and it features large storage area and good visibility from the driver's seat. It focuses on being the perfect sedan. BMW proceeds to release the 3, 5, 6, and 7 series sedans, but let's go to New York. Enter Max Hoffman, a New York car dealer and importer of European cars. He brought the sheer driving experience to America when BMW hadn't even started manufacturing in the US. Max was very successful, and the Americans loved the European cars. Max is so important, in fact, that he is in the Automotive Hall of Fame, but he didn't start importing European cars to America. In fact, it was vice versa. He was importing American cars to Europe. Max was born in Austria. He has a bicycle business with his father and he is also an amateur with racing automobiles. His importing starts in Austria, where he does luxury American imports. In 1938, he decides to move his business to Paris, France, until England and France declare war on Germany. So Max says nope, and quickly makes a beeline to the States, where he opens a jewelry store. After the war ends and automobile production in Europe is back on the assembly line, he decides to reopen his business as an importer, but this time importing European autos to the US. This makes him extremely successful because the Americans love the European cars. He becomes the main distributor for Mercedes, BMW, and even Volkswagen. He also makes the automakers in Europe follow current trends in the US. In the 60s, BMW took a suggestion on making powerful sedans and muscle cars, and they were very successful, fitting big engines into the 2500 and 2800 models. This starts the 7 Series line of cars. It is now 1975, and BMW bought Max's distribution rights because Max retires from the importing business. This marks the start of BMW's first official dealership in the US. At the time, they also released the legendary 3.0 CSL, also called the Batmobile, because its wing is so big that it was against German regulations. So, BMW decides to use a sleek and sneaky tactic. They put the wing inside the trunk so the buyers can fit it on themselves. They now have the BMW Motorsport division, or BMW-M. This dominates for 6 years, but the Ford Capri RS 3100 takes the lead for a few years. But 10 years later, we see the start of the iconic BMW M5, the performance variant of the 5 Series. It takes the gold as the quickest production vehicle in its time, and in 1983, BMW makes the fastest produced diesel engine cars. And in 1988, they made the first electric ABS system, fitting it on one of their motorcycles. BMW also stars in 3 James Bond movies with the Z3, Z8, and 750iL variants. BMW buys Rover, and with it the Minivan, and Rolls-Royce. BMW also releases the famous X line, starting with the X5, BMW's first SUV. The X model sold like hotcakes. They took the gold in 2018 as the car BMW sold the most. With the rise of SUVs in America, it is very understandable. BMW also opened its first manufacturing facility in the US in South Carolina, which is now the biggest manufacturing facility, which in 2018 made 411,620 vehicles alone. But what about BMW's nickname? Is it Beamer or Bimmer? Beamer comes from the UK because they called motorcycles Beezers. Beamers were used to distinguish BMW motorcycles with normal motorcycles. So Beamer is used for BMW motorcycles and Bimmer should be used for cars. Another mystery in the BMW community is if the logo resembles plane propellers. It is simple to understand since BMW started off with aircraft engines. It is also believed because of an advert in 1929. But BMW's logo is actually based on Rap Engine Works' logo, since the outer ring is the same, but the white and blue is actually part of the flag of Bavaria. In the BMW logo, the Bavarian flag and the logo white and blue are inverted. This is because the government did not allow state flags on commercial company logos. BMW has also been on the top of technology and has been trying to increase the pleasure of driving a BMW. BMW's first electric car was not the i3. In fact, it was actually in 1972 with the 1602E. Its top speed was only 37 miles per hour. Later, the LS Electric was a secret project by BMW that was later followed by the BMW E1. And today, BMW has some of the fastest electric cars with the i3, i4, i5, iX, and i7. And BMW is now one of the biggest automotive manufacturing companies, from making plane engines to being one of the biggest car companies to ever exist. But what do you think BMW's future will bring? Let me know down in the comments below. I have been Pikesbegone, and this has been BMW, the sheer drive to success. Thank you for watching, and have an awesome week.